I'm actually right at that. Hey, so I've done a nice little warm up now and ready to squat, which is the main work of today. Going up to a single first, and this thing was going to be at RPE 9, so pretty hard, pretty tough. I'm going to try and show you how I work out what weight to use with the RPE. After that, we've got some back down triples at about RPE 7. Following that, we've got some bench press, which will be a bit of fun as well to compare how I use RPE a little differently. Well, I have some different considerations between squat and bench press. So let's get into it. Not RPE 9 just yet. Yeah. Like, my suspicion is that it's like, they were probably just really, really tired. And probably the same amount of bouncy, if people remember how tight they were and they like inflated a little bit. Let's hope this isn't RPE 9. We're at 120 kilos at the moment. Belt goes on next set. It's okay.
Are you thinking about anything during these warm-ups?
Yeah, mostly I'm trying to get the bar sitting really nicely on my back in a good, stable position. Trying to sort of draw my scapulas together to make a bit of a shelf. And I'm trying to brace down, take this big breath and just hold that there. I used to be pretty loose in my warm-ups, but now I find my top sets better if I practice the kind of bracing I want to do on the top sets on the warm-ups. I'm out of breath from my 3 reps. Belt will go on this set. And in a handy intra-workout snack to keep you going. Belt's on. I don't put the belt on at any particular percentage, and I'm very happy doing some of my really heavy work beltless sometimes, but it obviously helps, and we're trying to squat a serious competition RPE 9 today. So belt goes on at 170, get the feel for it.
What does the belt do?
It acts kind of like more abs and more spinal erectors. Like, it is stiff and sort of like supports you a little bit. It's also a very useful proprioceptive tool that it can help you breathe and brace against it to have better intra-abdominal pressure, which also lets you be more rigid. So helps you transfer force. Studies show that it usually improves the bar path as well as bar velocity. So lots of really useful things from the belt. I have a little quirk that I like to reverse it, turn it around the wrong way. And that's really just come from, I like having the pokiati bit behind me, so it doesn't, when I squat down, like, you know, get hit on my legs or like crunch my stomach or anything like that. Just a little quirk of mine. A couple of other people do it. I don't think you need to, but you can try it if you want. Whew. So, I don't know how that looked, but felt pretty strong, pretty fast. A little weird on both of them, as just as you come up through the weights, sometimes it takes a little bit of adjusting to, oh, okay, this is a heavy weight now, you got to move it a little differently. But I still rate that double as being below an RPE 5. I could have definitely done 5 more, probably more still than that. Plenty of room to grow. God.
Alright. What happens if you go over your target RPE?
So that's not ideal. You want to hit your RPEs, but it happens sometimes. Try to minimize damage. So the jumps that you take, you're trying to take huge jumps where if you're wrong on your RPE, it's going to be like 2-3 points over. Even when you're wrong, it shouldn't be by that much. But really all you can do is don't beat yourself up, move on and learn from it next time and hopefully hit your RPE next time. So belt on again. We're going to do a single with 200. I expect this will probably be like an RPE 6-ish, where I could probably do another 4 or thereabouts. If it's significantly more or less than that, that tells me interesting things about what sort of jumps I can take. Like if it's an RPE like 3 or just like super duper easy, I know I'm really strong, I can be really confident going forwards. If it's an RPE 7 or even an 8, okay, I'm not having a great day, so we're going to be a bit more conservative on the next jump. So that's what I'm looking for at this point. So I tend to try to have similar weights that I do most workouts. Like this is a competition squat workout, and I often go to 200. And so I know what 200 is supposed to feel like when I feel normal. And so changes up and down from that, I'm sensitive to. Because if your jumps are different every time, sometimes you squat 60 for 5, or you go straight to 70 for 5. It can be hard to know, do I feel good? Do I feel bad? So try to have some consistency in your warm-ups a lot of the time. That helps you judge. I like the belt nice and tight for the heavy stuff. Oh. There are different schools of thought of how tight the belt should be. I find, at least for squatting, as long as I can still squat, the tighter the better. It's not the case for everyone. Some people like it to have like a certain amount of looseness where you breathe and push out into it, sort of meet the belt, or it's sort of lightly resting on you and you expand against it. I like it already being quite snug. Just makes me feel very braced, very powerful. Let's do it. Let's hope this is RPE 6. Whew. All right, I'd say that's probably about a 6. It can be hard to know sometimes with singles because, it's on the heavier side. It's still over probably 80% of my best, but for one, it's not all that bad. I'd rate that roughly a 6. Could be a 5, could be a 7. I'm not super dialed into the exact number right now, just knowing we're probably on track. So I'm probably gonna take a jump to 215 on the next one, which will be my last warm-up. So that'll tell me, am I good for 230 like I want today? Or do I have to go a little less? Or am I good for a little more? So we'll see. You might see when I'm setting up and I'm doing all sorts of setting myself under there and breathing and pausing. That's not for any technical reason. That's just because it's heavy. Getting myself a little bit psyched up about it, which is gonna be natural. If I can take this thing off. Which is gonna be natural with heavier weights, but you usually do need to get a little bit excited. You need to get a little bit, what's the word? Like your nervous system needs to be aroused. Trying not to say aroused, but now I've done it. To do them properly, you can't lift 100% of your max just not giving a shit. Like you need to have some kind of investment in it. So me getting worked up under the bar, it's me getting invested. Can I say shit?
What happens if I'm 1 RPE point under? Is there a...
1 RPE point under, so you're not there yet if you're 1 RPE point under. So to go up an RPE point, on average, it's going to be a 3% increase from the load you just used. So if you're meant to be squatting 5 reps at an RPE of 8, and you just did 5 reps at 100 kilos, and it was an RPE 7, you'd add 3%, so 3 kilos to ideally move up an RPE point. So you'd probably round to 2.5 in that case. So if 1 or 2.5. So you would go up if you're a full RPE point under, and that's probably how you'd work it out.
What if you're only 0.5 RPE points under?
If you're only 0.5, that's fine. Just probably leave it there. And if it's a consistent thing, make sure that you are training hard enough on subsequent weeks. If you know you've undershot by half a point for 2-3 weeks, no, you've got to push a little harder next time. But in general, I wouldn't worry about it. Half a point's pretty close. Alrighty. I usually find that it's the second last set that usually gets me more nervous than the top set, because this is the one that tells me what kind of day it's going to be. Like, I want to do really well on this 215, because I want this set to tell me I'm good to go up as much weight as I want to, to the appropriate weight. And if it's not good, that's a bit frustrating. It means I've got to use a bit less weight to use the correct RPE for my top set. So this is the one that gives me the most focus, and then I'll be confident for whatever I select as the top set. All right, ready. I think that's pretty good. I would rate that a 7 or a 7.5. I'm not sure how fast it looked. Felt reasonably fast. I feel my hips kick back a little bit out of the bottom there, but I can actually tolerate a lot of that variation. Like, my hip shooting back does not mean the lift is near its end. That's just kind of one of my compensations when it gets heavier. So with that 215, I'm pretty confident in putting on 230 for an RPE 9. This is the keeping the muscles warm activity, loading the plates. As an athlete, you may never have experienced loading the plates yourself, only having your coaches to do it for you. I'm here to tell you that there are unique and potent benefits to loading your own plates. So as soon as you can, I recommend making the switch. It's not bad. Could do with another red, but it's not bad.
Is the quality content that I want. Do I need to add weight to the bar each week?
Well, it would be really nice if you could, and you did. You can't always. The mindset that works best with RPE is something that smarter people than me call controlled aggressive, where the controlled part is doing your best to not exceed the RPEs that are prescribed, but the aggressive is trying to load as much weight as you possibly can while staying within that RPE. So when you go an RPE 8 prescribed, you want to lift as much weight as you possibly can without going into 8.5 territory. So ideally, if the training's good, depending on like life factors and so on, you should be a little stronger each week to week, depending on the structure of your program, and expect to put on a little bit of weight on the bar, but can't always happen. It's fine if you don't, doesn't necessarily mean you've done anything wrong. It's better to hit the RPE than to want to add more weight and put more weight on even when it's not appropriate.
What are you doing now?
I am a type 1 diabetic, so my blood sugars do weird things. My body doesn't regulate it up or down automatically, so to know where my blood sugar's at, I do tests with my blood. When my blood sugar's too low, I eat some more stuff, and if it's too high, I give insulin in the form of injection. So 8.3 is pretty good. Tells me that I'm in good shape to be lifting heavy weights.
What are you doing there here?
Oh, nothing, just, interset rather, rehabilitation exercises. My biceps, I have a case of the smalls. I'm trying to fix that. Anyway, you had a question or something, didn't you?
What happens if my form always breaks down to higher RPEs?
Yeah, so that's why you'll usually see the RPEs a little higher with accessories, simple stuff like a leg extension or maybe even like a bodyweight squat. It's kind of hard to get it too wrong most of the time, but with main barbell movements, squat, bench, deadlift, usually we don't prescribe for most people until they're reasonably experienced, like much higher than like maybe an 8, and that's still pretty heavy because that technical failure is more likely. It's more complicated, more moving parts, more things can go wrong. So when we're talking RPE for complex barbell things like a squat, we're talking failure at RPE 10 kind of more in the terms of technical failure, in terms of, okay, this is not executed like a squat that I want to be training. And the extent to which, like how much breakdown that is going to depend on the person. Like I'm squatting at the moment and my squats aren't perfect. My hips sort of shoot back and I drop my chest a little bit, and it's like, if it was a perfect squat, I probably wouldn't do that. But it's still more or less my normal squat. If you're finding that you're someone when the squat gets heavier, you just can't squat to depth for whatever reason, that is too heavy. You have hit 10 on your technical failure. Same as deadlift. If your back position is like pretty good up to a certain point, and then it's just very different, much more flexed, much more challenging, not the position to try and train, you've hit technical failure. Even if you could do more reps, I'd still call it a 10. Hopefully that answers your question. My biceps never getting bigger. So, RP9, it's a heavy weight, it's pretty scary. I've done this weight before, I have absolute confidence I'm going to do it. That doesn't mean that I'm still not nervous about it, which is fine. Nothing wrong with being nervous about the weights that you lift when they're heavy. It also means that's why we're not doing RP9s all the time. That mental stress of, oh God, it's really heavy, like what if something goes wrong? Like that's the kind of thing that needs to be regulated, same as the actual fatigue of it being a really challenging rep. So that's why I'm doing this just special for you guys today.
Mental fatigue is real fatigue.
It absolutely is. Alrighty, 230, hopefully to 9. If it's 8.5, I will leave it there. If it's an 8, I may go up, and I should, based on what I've told you guys. And if it's more than a 9, then I have made a mistake which I'll have to learn from next time. Whew. So, reasonably hard rep. I don't know how it looks, but if it looked anything like it felt, it's pretty hard. I'd say that probably is about a 9 for me. My squatting can get pretty slow and pretty tough, and I still make it. Didn't want to do another one, but I reckon I probably had one more in me. So if I'm saying probably, might be a 9.5, maybe I've gone a little more. So I'd say that's either 9 or 9.5. Definitely enough weight for today. And next week, being that that's sort of 9, maybe 9.5, I might aim to either repeat this or maybe just make a smaller jump than I have the previous week. This is a 10 kilo jump from last week for me on this weight, which is fairly sizable. So next week, might make a 5 kilo jump, 2.5 jump, something a little bit more conservative to make sure it's 9 or even a little less rather than 9 or could be a little more. But top set done, and I'm in one piece, which is always a good thing. Whew. Another squat survived. 170 is going to be what we're going to go to next for, I have some sets of 3, and they're meant to be at RPE 7. I think that 170 might be around there, might be a little less, but better start a little lower. So if it is like, it's a 6 or a 5, I can put on a little bit of weight. Because if I went higher and I went, I'd love to do 200 for a set of 3 at RPE 7, and it's RPE 9 or something, that's going to wreck me for the next 2 sets of 3 that I have to do. So better start a little easy. So it is a nice feeling sometimes to take a full 60 kilos off your squat when you get to do your back downs. Because not all the work you have to do has to be super duper heavy. Because if it's always super duper heavy, it's always super duper hard. Fatigue will be massive. So you pick your battles.
How do you know if you've reached the target RPE?
Well, That can be very hard when you get started to know exactly what things are, because when you start, all you really know is that was easy, that was hard, and I could do more reps and it'll be okay, or I don't really want to do any more reps. That's sort of all you really start with. So you're going to have to build up your skill of deciding how many more you could do. And sometimes having exposure to those really high RPEs, like 8, 9, 10, where you're pretty sure you're in that 1, 2, or none zone, that can give you a really good benchmark to compare other sets to that. But when it's like a set of 5, an RPE 6, that can be reasonably hard to judge. So you're going to have to learn the skill of judging RPE, among other things. But you just need to try and think, how many more reps could I do, and estimate your best from there. Something I used to do, a bit of a mistake, is I'd go so hard on my top sets. Sometimes it would be an overshoot, and sometimes it would even be the correct RPE, but I just put so much energy into them, like mental, physical, that I'd get to my back down sets, and I'd just be exhausted. I couldn't do anything reasonable. It'd either have to be really light, or like one set, or I'd just skip it. So hopefully I've still conserved a bit of energy that I can do some more quality work on these back downs. So this is 170, and we're going to do a set of 3. I'd like it to be, well, I want my sets of 3 to be at about a 7. I think this might be light if I'm being strict on my RPE, which I am, and then we'll go up from there, as long as we're more than half a point away. Whew. Alrighty. I think, unfortunately for me, that's not quite a 7. I'd say we're in the ballpark. I think that's probably something like 5.5 or a 6, but I think that I might go up to 180 for the remaining sets to get my work done. I might actually count that as a set, but I'm going to adjust the other sets. Whether you're going to do that or not might depend on what your coach prefers. Can still work, but not exactly the prescribed RPE. So we're going up for 2 more sets. Crazy. World champion. I used to sometimes do the belt less tight, or my back downs be like, oh yeah, it's not as hard now, but we just make the set harder because the belt's not as tight. So I don't do that anymore. Just tighten the belt like normal. Yeah. Oh, he's a big boy. Yeah. 180, hopefully an RPE 7, because I don't feel like lifting more than this. But if it's not an RPE 7, well, I guess I'm probably going to go more. I reckon that's probably a 6.5, and because it's within half, I'm going to call it good, so I'm going to stay with that for my last set of squats.
Hello. Is RPE the only way to train?
No, RPE is not the only way to train. Having some kind of auto-regulation in your program will almost always, for almost everyone, make it better, which is just making small adjustments based on how you're doing on a particular day. If for you, what that looks like is you've just got your own system in your head, like you have percentages, I'm squatting 75% for sets of 5 today, and you just decide 75% of that weight is feeling really heavy, I'm going to do less. Or that feels really light, I'm going to do more. That's fine. And that's auto-regulation, though it's not RPE. I do think that if you're always using rigid numbers, generated either by percentage or just you or your coach said, yep, that's the number, you're going to run into trouble. Sometimes you will be feeling really weak on a particular day or really strong, and it will not be the stimulus in the workout that it was intended to be. So some kind of regulation, auto-regulation is going to improve your program. So squats all wrapped up, my knees are free of the knee sleeves, and we're gonna do some bench press now. So same protocol, gonna go up to a single at maybe not a 9, I think it'd be more like an 8 or an 8.5. I'm gonna say, for the sake of clarity and trying to hit it, I'm going to say I'm trying to hit an 8.5. And after that, I got 3 sets of 3, ideally at RPE 7. So bench press, few considerations different to squat or deadlift. Obviously, being that the total weight on the bar is gonna be less, a lot of the time you need to be a little bit more conservative with your jumps. So if we're using that 3% rule for jumping between RPE points, like 3% weight more raises an RPE point, we got to realize that that's probably going to mean it's going to be less weight that will make that change, being a percentage. So, 2.5 kilos can make a difference. You need to be quite conservative with your jumps, because especially if you're a less muscular person and you are not as skilled, RPE can really creep up on you in bench. You can do a set of 2 and it's an RPE 7. You can add 5 kilos and sometimes it won't go at all, or it's going to be like 1 at 9. So you got to be a little careful with your jumps, but you can learn it just like the squat and deadlift. Fine. So let's do some bench press. Probably one down. Bench pressing is really tiring because that arched held breath position is pretty fatiguing. With squats, you sort of get a little break at the top to some degree. Deadlift, when it's on the ground, you get a bit of a break, but bench press, you're holding that position all set. It takes the wind out of you. Set of 3 with 100, not too bad. As 100 is usually one of my jumps I go through, I have a pretty good idea of what 100 is supposed to feel like, and that felt pretty light, pretty good. So maybe it's gonna be a really good day. The guy just doesn't react in the mirror, like his reflection doesn't. I'm talking about scary movies. Time to bench 120, which is its own scary movie. I'm probably gonna do this for a set of 2 or 3. I expect this to be still reasonably low RPE. It's just another step along the way to get me warmed up. Okay, there's a heavier weight and get the feel for how strong am I today, so I can make those intelligent jumps up to my top weight. I'm looking to probably use maybe 145, 150 for the top weight, so we're getting there at 120, we're getting there. Yeah, it was pretty good. I did some tricep training with Ty on Saturday, and that absolutely ruined me. So triceps are a little bit interesting today. They're holding up, but I'm still noticing some residual soreness. As anyone who's trained with Ty will know, he likes pounding his triceps. I think we'll go 140. 140 for 1. And hopefully it's an RP like 7. That'd be nice. Alrighty, so this is gonna be my last warm up, or if it's really heavy, it's gonna be my top set. 140, gonna do it for 1 rep, and I'm aiming for like 8.5 for the top set, so if this is 7.5, 8, that would be pretty good. Less is better, so I can load more weight, but I'm expecting it to be something like 7.5, 8. So, let's see. It was okay. I think that's probably an 8. could even be a little bit more. I'm going to go up to really conservative, just 142.5. Teeny bit more, and that should probably have me in that 8 to 8.5 range.
That's what we were discussing.
Yeah, so we were talking about how it's a pretty small jump, going a total of 2.5 overall, 1.25 either side. Pretty small jump, but one of the main reasons is I'm trying really hard as we're getting into my block. This is week 3 of the block. I want to be pushing those things. I want to be being controlled aggressive, where I don't think that last one was my 8.5 I wanted, but there's not much room left to go beyond. Like, I think 5 is probably too much, but we're taking that tiny, like almost irrelevant jump to get everything I can out of an 8.5 today. So you don't necessarily need to do that. If you did the 140 and you're meant to go 8.5 and it was an 8, that's a perfectly reasonable time to stop, but I'm pushing it to the whole 8.5 because I want to get everything I can out of that.
Would you do this on like a week 1 or?
Probably not. If I was a half point under on week 1, awesome. Guess I was stronger than my guess. Leave it there, keep a little in the tank, and build momentum to lift more weight next week. Yeah.
Add more weight. Lower the RPE.
Yeah, apparently. That was probably easier than the last one. But because I've already done 2 sets around RPE, I still think that was probably an 8. I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to do a third. Off to Backoffs now. But you've seen enough Backoff from the squatting. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this was illustrative of what it looks like to actually be using RPE in a session, just how it plays out if you don't have a coach somewhere telling you, you go up, go down, that was this, that was that. So if you have any further questions, please go ahead and ask. Like the video if you liked it, share it with anyone who's confused about RPE, and we'll see you next time.